So here's the law of cosines. If you want to highlight it, fine, circle it, fine. We will only use kind of one of them. Again, not new. I don't expect you to memorize it either, but we are going to practice it. So we're going to do numbers 1 and 2, and then I'll give you the worksheet. So obviously start by drawing your triangle. I do not care where your A, B, and C are. Doesn't change anything about the problem. Oops, big angle B is 34. All right, so the first thing you need to know is when to use the law of cosines versus the law of sines. That's important because it won't tell you use law of sines for this question, use law of cosines for this question. It won't tell you that. It'll just give you triangles and you have to know. And it's really easy. If you look at this setup, you draw your picture, is there an angle on its opposite side that we could highlight in pink like I've been doing with the law of sines? No. So when that doesn't exist, you do law of cosines. Okay? So when you can't highlight a matching pair, then you do law of cosines. So in this example, it's law of cosines, obviously. And then the way that I look at this, yes, you can have 3 different formulas for angle A, B, and C. But this angle, A, is really just the angle you have or the angle you're finding. So this is the angle everything is kind of going from. Yeah. So here's how it works. Doesn't matter, again, A's, B's, and C's, it doesn't matter. The key is, with the law of cosines, that you pay attention if the angle you're using, I don't know, maybe it's just easier to focus on each one separately since they're here. Maybe I won't make this harder than it is. Since since B is the angle that we have, or the angle that we're finding, then we start with the middle one. So we're going to go B squared equals A squared plus C squared minus 2AC cosine B. So here we go. B squared equals A squared, and it doesn't matter which one you choose, 14 or 11, it really doesn't matter. 11 squared plus 14 squared minus 2 times 11 times 14 cosine of 34. So people get all sorts of scared about this formula. It is not that hard. Here's the focus. This is the only thing that matters, that those 2 pieces are the pieces you started with. Then it doesn't matter, the 11 and 14, and their order can be switched, because when you're adding and multiplying, order doesn't matter. So the focus is the angle you have where you want is here. The other 2, I don't care how they fit in there, the other 2 just go in the middle. Take your fancy calculator. You can type all of this in your fancy calculator. Those of you without fancy calculators, you want to think about it as 3 blocks of work. If you don't have a fancy calculator, do this block of work, then this block of work, then you subtract, and then you square root. So let's do the fancy calculators first. Everybody get those on and ready. You need to use parentheses. Okay, so 11, find the squared function. Do you see it? Here? Okay, so 11 squared plus 14 squared minus, this is where parentheses have to happen. So 2 parentheses, 11 parentheses, 14. I guess they don't have parentheses around the 2. You don't have to either. But. And then cosine of 34, close parentheses. Okay, all that can be typed in at once. You hit enter. 61.65 should feel what? big or small compared to the pieces you have?
Huge.
Huge. Why is it huge? What's the last piece?
You got square rooted.
Good. Nice job.
B squared.
Square root it. So you hit second. Do you see second, the square root function? Second square root and then second answer. And it will tell you 7.85. Okay, if you are not dealing with a fancy calculator, you should break this into pieces. Do 11 squared plus 14 squared.
And then after that, you should do law of sines with stuff
Yes.
that you have.
Good. So yeah, if you're done and your calculator, you're good to go with your calculator, why don't you do law of sines at this point to see if you can find angle A. So law of sines to find angle A. People without the calculators like this, I'm going to show you how to do this. So if you don't have a fancy calculator, pay attention. You need to know how to do this. So you take 11 squared plus 14 squared, and that's 317. So that goes here. Minus. Then type in your calculator 2 times 11 times 14. And then multiply that by the cosine of 34. What is that number? It's 317. It's kind of sloppy. And then that number, did you get 255?
Yep. Okay,
yep. So 255.34. So then you do subtract. So there's your 61.66, I'm going to call it. And then your last step would be to square root. Okay? So as long as you keep the blocks of work separate, it will work for you that way too. So you have 600 or 61.66, and then you square root it. All right, law of sines, people, do we get a value for angle A, or do I want me to work you through that?
You would use inverse trig, right?
You would use inverse trig. So sine of 34 over 7.85 equals, so that's the pink equation, right? That's the pink piece. Did you do angle A?
Yeah.
Okay. Sine of A over 11. All right, so now I'm using law of sines to figure out angle A, which is why yesterday's work was helpful, was beneficial. And then how do you type this in your calculator? What do you do for this?
11 times 34, yeah.
Good. So 11 times sine of 34 divided by,
7.85.
okay, good. Good. So 51.6. Good point. You can round to the 10th all the time. I get caught up in rounding to the hundredths. I won't dock you for that, but the tenths is just fine. Yeah. You do. Law of cosines will be the whole triangle, but you just do law of cosines once, and then from then on it's law of sines. Okay? All right, so pause there. I want to do one more different law of cosines with you, and then I'll give you the worksheet. Maybe I'll just have you do 2 for tomorrow. Yeah, we need to do B. Yep. So here's B. It's a different setup with the law of cosines. So let's do this one together. Yeah. Really fast. Go fast. Really fast. Oh my gosh, it's probably not the best time, Carl. So, I mean, if you're going to go fast. I don't want you to take more. Okay, you have 5 minutes and then you can hydrate. So here we go. You're trying to find, first of all, before you start, you're trying to find out if you have enough information to do law of sines. Because anytime you can, you do law of sines. Is that available to us here?
No.
No, so then we're forced into law of cosines. Eric, you with me? So law of cosines means we have to pick an angle. Are we given an angle?
No.
pick an angle, always choose A. It's just easy. So we're going to choose A. So then it doesn't matter which one's B and C at this point. The only thing that matters is that we've chosen what we start with. So it goes 12 squared equals 20 squared plus 27 squared. So here's our pink value. Then the other two numbers don't care. Just put them in there. Minus 2 times 20. Good. 27 times 27. And then it's cosine of A.
So then we can just do algebra to get to what cosine would be.
All right, so yeah, you're going to have to do some inverse trig, but here's how I'm going to suggest to do it. I'm going to have you guys do the blocks of work, so everybody will do what the non-fancy calculator people do. So put 3 different blocks up. Thinking about it as 3 different separate blocks that you'll do to figure out your cosine at the end. So we'll just kind of work. This is a little bit more equation work. So 12 times 12. And then what's 20 squared plus 27 squared?
1,129.
1,129. Thank you. Minus, and then do 2 times 20 times 27. So just do this piece. So 2 times 20 times 27. Thank you. And then cosine of A. Okay. So now we want to get cosine of A by itself because that's the unknown, the variable. So we're going to shift this across the equal sign, right? It's just like solving for x. Let's pretend this is 1080x. So what do I do to get rid of the 1,129? Subtract it. So it's 144 minus 1,129, negative 95. 985, okay. And then what do you do to get the negative 1,080?
Divide by negative 1,080.
Good. Divide by negative 1,080, because again, we're trying to solve for cosine of A. This is our x. So we divide by what, negative 1,080? Should be an ugly decimal, so let's everybody do that in your calculator. 985 divided by 1,080.
Negative 95, right?
They're both negative, so I knew the answer would be positive. Okay? And then that's the angle, or do we have to do inverse trig? Right. So then we do shift, or second, cosine. So your angle is 24.2. Okay, and now you're done with law of cosines forever. Because, well, on this question forever, because you would just do law of sines to come up with the other pieces. So